Hey there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have part one of a two-part series featuring the August 2018 My Monthly Hero Arts Kit. So let's go ahead and take a look at what is inside the kit. And as far as I know, this kit is still available. So if you want it, I will have it linked down below. They always come with a ribbon tied around the stamp set and other various things in there. And so the stamp set is a 6x8 clear stamp set. They usually always are. And it also comes with 11 coordinating frame cuts along with the 13.5 by 4.5 inch window fancy die. And I like to keep my packaging, so I will use my embossing buddy on some of the sticky parts so that it won't be sticky anymore and I don't have to worry about that sticking to the packaging. So that's what those look like. They're great. Oh, I love coffee sets. I'm obsessed with coffee sets. Even though I don't drink coffee, I drink tea. So that's kind of funny. And then the little extras in the kit are a crystal clear lacquer pen, which is a 1/2 ounce, and it also comes with some white puff embossing powder, and then 2 sheets that are 5.5 by 8.5 inch of coffee and tea hand-dyed decorative papers. So let's go ahead and get started with the first card. I'm using my stamp platform along with a 6 by 6 inch foliage bold prints stamp from Hero Arts, and I'm just going to kind of tack down some Neenah Desert Storm paper with some just a little bit of tape runner, and I'm using some Lawn Fawn Noble Fur ink, and I am going to stamp up that background. But if you notice, I'm just kind of avoiding the middle. I don't want to stamp the middle, so I will just ink that up as well as I can, and then I'm going to grab a baby wipe that is not totally wet but not totally dry, and I'm going to kind of sop up some of that from the middle so that it's not as stark. And then I will stamp that down, making sure that I have good coverage. And I think I have to do that about 3 times just to make sure. And then I will pull that out. I'm grabbing my Big Shot, which you never see because it takes up so much space on my desk, so I can't really show it. But I wanted to show you that I'm putting the metal shim down, then I'm putting one of the plates, I am putting my panel, and then I'm putting that fancy die on top. And then I will put one more of the plates on top, and then I will run that through my Big Shot. I wanted to make sure, because I tested it, I wanted to make sure that all that got cut, and it worked out beautifully, as you can see. I ended up putting that big chunk from the middle right back in the center there because I wanted some stability. I'm going to do a little bit of sponging using some Gathered Twigs Distress ink and a mini ink blending tool. And if I had just tried to do it without that part in the middle, it probably would have torn. And I'm not using a lot of pressure here, but they're very delicate pieces in the center there. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't get too aggressive and having that in the middle, well, it helped so that I wasn't. And I'll just continue sponging all around the middle there because I just felt like it wasn't, it was just too stark. And then I also decide I need some on the outside as well. So I will sponge all along the edge there. And let me just tell you, sponging on that glass mat is really nice. There is a difference. So I really enjoy sponging using the glass mat. And now I'm going to stamp my sentiment. So I will grab my Mini Misty because after this you don't really want to screw it up. Even though there isn't anything on that background, it wouldn't, I just want to make sure I had it centered well. And you don't want to do it too many times if you don't have to. So I've put my sentiment there in the center, and then I'm going to grab that Lawn Fawn Noble Fur ink again, and I will ink that up really well and stamp that down. But I felt like that was just a little too simple, so... And you'll see, I'm going to grab some tape runner, and I will just tape runner everything down because this is fairly thin cardstock. My base is even 80-pound Neenah cardstock. All of it is, and so that's why I didn't mind putting another piece of that white on top of my A2 size card base, which is top folding. And then I'll also use the tape runner on my fancy die panel. So here's what I meant by it was too simple. So I'm grabbing some tacky glue, and I'm also going to use some Pretty Pink Posh Espresso sequins in 6mm and 4mm. And I start out fairly conservative by putting those down. I didn't have too many on there, and I felt like it just wasn't enough. I think I only put 5 to start, and I got to looking and I thought, it's just not enough. So I decided to put a few more. The fancy die speaks for itself, and it's really pretty. But, you know, as a card maker, sometimes I feel like I just had to add more. So I added more sequins. And when I'm done adding all of those sequins, that will end up finishing off the first card. So card number 2 was inspired after I watched a Jennifer McGuire video on magic slider cards. And so I have just a piece of cardstock from my stash that I have scored like I always do at 5.5 inches, making it a top folding A2 size card. But in this case, it's going to be bottom folding. So I am using some My Favorite Things Inside and Out stitched rectangle stacks. And watch how I am only do partial die cutting here. I'm lining it up where I want the die to stop cutting. So it will only cut through just to that part. And while I have out my die cutting machine, I'm going to cut out 2 more pieces that are actually bigger than what I just die cut. So I used the biggest die for these 2 white pieces, and I used the second biggest die for my window. And now I'm going to do some scoring. And it'll be different for everybody because it depends on what you're using or how big of a size you're going to use. So that first fold was at 1/4 inch from the edge there. And this one's just going to be where I want the fold to be. And then the third fold or score line is actually going to be right in between those 2 score lines that I did previously. So like I said, for everybody it'll be different depending on what die you are using. And Jennifer McGuire's video actually was a whole process. Like I mean, it was specifically for magic slider cards, and I don't have that, so I'm making my own as I go. And I'm using a 1/2 circle punch to cut the tab, and I'm going to use those white pieces that I cut. I'm going to put that one right there in the middle using some tape runner, and that way it's bigger than the entry or the what you'll see. And then I'm going to take that second piece and I'm going to use some very strong adhesive. In this case, it's going to be score tape. And I'm only putting the score tape right on that 1/4 inch piece there that I had scored. And that's it, because I want it to be nice and strong. And that's the strongest I have, other than liquid adhesive, but I wanted this dry now. So I'll peel off that score tape, keeping everything nice and flat. And then I'm going to line up that piece of cardstock right along that edge. Okay, so that way when I fold that over, I'm not going to do it just quite yet. I'm not going to attach them, but that's what the magic slider will do. So now I will use the score tape again to make sure it's good and secure. And I'm not putting it right up against that because I want to make sure that that cardstock is going to slide very easily. But this way, once I've peeled all that backing paper off and I close up this card, everything will be nice and secure exactly where it's supposed to be. Really pretty simple. So I didn't give you measurements because, like I said, everybody's will be different. Now it's time to decorate that bad boy. So I'm going to use some glitter paper that I have from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm cutting that at 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to trim it down so that it'll fit right on top of that tab. I figured blue and orange would be good complementary colors. Well, clearly because they are. So I thought this would be nice because it would stand out really well. And my 1/4 inch score tape is too big. I didn't want it to be too much, so I'm just using liquid glue. I don't have the 1/8 inch score tape, but I'll have to remedy that, I'm sure. And then I'm going to punch out 2 circles with that 1/2 inch punch, and those are going to be my pull tab. Because as it is, it's hard to grab onto that piece. You can, but this is just prettier. I mean, who wouldn't like a little glitter tab? And then I'll put a little glue on the back part there as well. And then I will set those off to the side to dry to make sure that they are good and dry before I mess with it anymore. Moving on to my stamping, I'm using the 2 cups from the stamp set, and I'm going to stamp those onto some Espresso cardstock, which I've said before is my favorite cardstock for Copic coloring. And I'm using Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, both Copic friendly, meaning the ink won't smudge when I use my Copics. And then I'm also going to stamp out the whipped cream as well. I will color those off camera, otherwise this would be so long, and I will run those through my die cutting machine with the matching dies that came in the kit. And then I ended up cutting out another rectangle that was the same size as what I had used for my opening panel. And I am going to adhere just at the bottom, below that score line. I'm going to adhere that piece of cardstock to it, and you'll see why. If you adhered the whole thing, it wouldn't open the way it's supposed to. So by only putting it on the bottom, your magic slider will open. And now I'm going to stamp the sentiment, so I put that in my Mini Misty. And I will use that Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink again. Stamp out my sentiment, and voila. And to adhere, before I adhere my images, I'm going to cover those in some Nuvo glitter gloss so that they're good and shiny. You won't be able to see on camera, but they are. And then I covered those in some foam tape so that my images would pop up. And I did that with the whipped cream as well, but it needed more, so I grabbed some Auburn Pearl crystal drops, and I'm just going to put those on. Not too crazy, just a few. And when I have those done, that'll finish off card number 2. For card number 3, I have seen some beautiful watercoloring done with this set, so I figured I had to try my hand at it. So I have some Strathmore 140-pound cardstock in my stamp platform, and I am going to stamp this particular image all over the background. And it's pretty tedious, so I'm not going to show you all of it. I do, because I have to pick up and clean my stamp every time and make sure that that stamp hasn't, or that card panel hasn't moved even the slightest. So I will just continue to do this all over the background using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and then cleaning my stamp and repositioning it. Once all of my background stamping is done, I grab one of those little cream images and I stamp that into one of the cups using some Distress Oxide in Gathered Twigs. And then I've dried everything with my heat tool off camera, and I have the painting sped up about 4 times because otherwise, you know, it would get old, I'm sure. And I am just using my Magello Mission Gold watercolors. You've seen me use these before if you've been to my channel at all. And of course my light source, for whatever reason, I always have it coming from the right-hand side. One of these days, maybe I'll switch it up and I'll really throw you guys off guard, who knows. But for now, I'm just grabbing some coffee color and I am putting it in all the other coffee cups other than that one with the little cream image. What do you call that? I don't know what that's called. They're really pretty, and I've never actually had a coffee with that in it, but I think they're really pretty if people can actually do them. And because I use Distress Oxide inks, those are reactive with water, so I'm just putting some clean water over the top of it to kind of fuzz the image a little bit, because as you know, if you've seen one of those, which I have, I just have never bought one, they are a little fuzzy. And so I just spread that color around. And now I'm going to add some shadowing to the coffee cups. I kept the coffee cups themselves pretty simple. Obviously, they're just going to be white, all of them. I thought that would be a little bit more dramatic, maybe. Maybe that's not the word I'm looking for. But I liked the white contrast with the coffee in the cups. This image is just really cute. And in the set, there's 3 or 4 different little cream swirl images. Like I said, I don't know what they're called, but they're cute. You could probably have done a different image in each one of those cups. And now I'm going to paint the tablecloth or the table or whatever is underneath these coffee mugs, and I'm doing that with a purple. And I'm starting with a fairly flat wash. I've done this before, and I think the key to this is basically just keeping it wet and keeping that color moving. It's not perfect. My coloring isn't perfect, and I know that this paper isn't exactly probably the most, it's not the best for this kind of painting, but this is what I have and this is what I'm using, and I didn't want it to be exactly perfect. These images aren't lifelike or necessarily realistic, so it's okay if they're a little bit off. And it's art, it's a card, and so, you know, we do what we want, right? So I'll just keep putting that color all over the background, and then once I'm done with that, I will start adding some shadowing, because it's pretty flat right now, other than the coffee and the coffee cups themselves. So again, with my light source coming in from the right, I will start adding some more darker purple around those edges there until I'm happy with the look that I have, or the look that I want. I feel like I could have done a bunch of these in all different colors. Could you imagine doing a set of these? Oh, it'd be so cute, using different colors of background for your tablecloth. And then I splattered some brown on there. And now for my sentiment, I am stamping my sentiment onto some black. I used an anti-static powder tool, I just didn't show you. And then I'm covering that with some ultrafine embossing powder. And then I'll heat set that off camera. And I will also trim that down. And I'm going to give it a flag banner, so I'll cut into the middle. And then those edges, I will cut those right towards the middle. And I'm going to use some Tombow Mono Multi to adhere my card base, or my card panel to my base, which the base is it's 80-pound Neenah cardstock. It's not real thick, but that's what I have. And then I'm going to use some foam tape to pop up my sentiment, and then I'll trim off the excess, and that will end up finishing off card number 3. Card number 4 is going to utilize some of that gorgeous tea-dyed paper that came in the kit, and I'm using my large scallop circle nestabilities. I will try and link to those down below. I don't know that anybody sells them anymore, but I'm pretty sure you can probably find them on Amazon for a ridiculous amount of money. I'm going to stamp out that one image, that one coffee cup, and I don't show you the coloring because it's really simple, but I will tell you that I used V12 and V06 to color my coffee cup. And with the coloring done, I stamp Your Sweet on top of the coffee cup. And then I use the matching die that came in the kit, and I will run that through my Sizzix Sidekick. This particular video is getting fairly long, so I figured I would cut some of that out. And I'm using Neenah Desert Storm as a card base, and that is a top folding A2 sized card. And I will tack down my tea-dyed paper with my Tombow adhesive, just a tape runner, and then I will use a liquid adhesive to tack down my scalloped circle. And I want that kind of hanging off because I'm going to trim that down, but this way that'll stay put really, really well by using that Tombow Mono Multi. And then I'll trim the excess off, and I will grab the ribbon that came in the kit as well. I'm going to tie that around. Originally I thought I would tie a whole bow, but I decided against that. So I will tie a single knot, and then I will use my reverse tweezers to hold those in place, if I can get them on there. I will hold those in place with my reverse tweezers, and then I will tie the rest of the knot. And then I will trim down my ribbon just using some scissors. And then I will grab some foam tape and adhere my coffee mug. And I decide I want to pull the ribbon up a little bit more. So I also wanted to use the really puffy embossing powder that came in the kit along with the clear lacquer to put it on. And so I'm just kind of adhering that all over the top part of my coffee mug. And then I will sprinkle that embossing powder all over the top. And I'll use a paintbrush to get off the excess that shouldn't be there. And I will leave in the embossing simply because it's really cool. This stuff does puff up really well. I don't know what Hero Arts did to make this stuff, but oh, it's so cool. I can see using this for Christmas cards as well because it puffs so nicely. And then I will use some Violet Galaxy Crystal, Nouveau Crystal drops, and I will add that as a final embellishment on my card. And that'll finish off card number 4. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the final, or the first 4 cards in this series. And I would, like I said, I've always said, I love knowing which ones are your favorite. I don't know. I could tell you which one's my favorite, and it's probably the watercolored one, just simply because I love watercoloring. But I enjoyed making all of these cards. So if you liked this card, or any of these cards, please hit the like button. Thank you for subscribing, and be sure to stay tuned because part 2 will be on its way shortly. And as always, you guys, thank you so much for stopping by.